rising 'cause we're fed up. Got our house in order and got chores inside. I am American. That's what I am. That's what I think and what I do. I am American. That's what I am.
Thank you very much, Steve, and thanks to everybody for turning up tonight. I know it's a bit of a challenge. You know, you Texans aren't used to this kind of weather. But can everybody hear me all right? Yeah. Understand the southern accent okay? On account of the weather, I thought I'd just start with a little story my wife reminded me of. Who knows Curtis Bowers in the Agenda movies? Agenda, grinding America down, you know, okay. The Curtis Bowers' father, back in the 1960s, was based out of Missouri, and he was a PhD student, and he worked full time. And his wife, who was a homemaker, read J. Edgar Hoover's book, Masters of Deceit, about the communist infiltration of America. And she was very fired up about this. So what she would do is she would scour the letters to the editor, and she'd pick out intelligent letters, liberal or conservative, and then she would get her husband to go and hold little talks, and she would invite the people from the letters to the editor to the talks, and he would educate people on communism, right? And he would do this even though he was doing his PhD, he was working every night. There one night, it was a dark and stormy night, right? And it was raining and pouring, and it was totally inhospitable, just sort of like tonight. So Mr. Bowers went out to his meeting in a little hall. He wanted to call it off, but his wife insisted that he go. So he went there, and there was one gentleman and one guy. He said, well, okay, I'm gonna give it. You know, he came, I'm going to give my speech. So he gave his whole speech on communism. And this guy, who was a liberal, he had been invited because he had written a very intelligent liberal letter to the paper. He said at the end of it, he said, well, if half is what you say is true, we're in big trouble. I'm going to go away and research this. So this gentleman went away and researched this, then he came back to Mr. Bowers after a couple of months, said, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to write a book about communism in America. Mr. Bowers said, oh, that's a bit extreme, don't you think? He said, look, you're right, this is a big issue, I've got to do something about this. So he quit his job, he wrote this book, and it was called None Dare Call It Treason. And he put it out on the market, and he sold 6 million copies out of his garage in Missouri. He had biker gangs doing the dispatch for him. He had local Boy Scouts doing the dispatch. He had everybody coming into his garage and sending out 6 million books. Ronald Reagan would buy them by the 100. Ronald Reagan had None Dare Call It Treason on his desk in the White House. Ronald Reagan said that book, there never would have been a Reagan revolution without that book. So one man on a dark and stormy night went to an audience, and that one man he talked to probably changed the face of this nation. So don't ever think that your effort, that your words fall on deaf ears, because you never know where the seed is going to germinate. So I just thought it was a very appropriate night to say that story. Now I know there's 1 or 2 refugees from California here tonight, but I'll tell my California story. You've probably heard this before. So I was in Los Angeles, and I went up to a fast food vendor. I bought some food, and the guy said to me, hey, you've got an accent. Where are you from? I said, I'm from New Zealand. He said, well, where's that? So to make it easy for him, I said, look, it's down near Australia. He said, where Arnold Schwarzenegger comes from. So that's what happens when liberals get control of your education system. And you got to make sure, I know it's happening in Texas now, you got to fight back against that. And the one thing we all got to push for is to abolish that Department of Education so you can control your own education in your own state. Now, people always ask me, they say, you know, why do I even come to America? Like, I've got a perfectly nice country, I'm back in the South Pacific. Why do I come here? And I said that there are two reasons. The first is simple gratitude. You know, my country was facing invasion by the Japanese army in World War II. And if it hadn't been for the sacrifice of your fathers and uncles and grandfathers at the battles of Guadalcanal and the Coral Sea and Midway, we would have been done, folks. And that's still a strong memory in my country today. The second reason is related, but it's a little more selfish. Ronald Reagan had it right. This is the last best hope for mankind. If freedom should ever fail in the United States, if you lose your constitution, your liberty, your economic dynamism, and your military superiority, all of which took a huge trashing through the Obama years. If that trend had been allowed to continue, folks, it would not have been long before we would have been living in a world run out of Moscow and Tehran and Beijing and Havana. And is that the kind of world you want to leave to your children, folks? Because that's what we were facing. Still are in many ways. So, we had a bit of an interesting election night, right? Who thinks there might have been a touch of the miraculous about election night? You think God may have smiled on us on election night? Well, this is, I'll just digress before I go into my main point. The Germans have a phrase, and I know there's a lot of German people in Texas. Germans have a phrase, it's Schadenfreude, and it means to take pleasure in the pain of others. It's not a very nice thing, right? It's not very, noble. But when you were watching TV on election night, and I'm sure you stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning, and when they panned the Democratic Party headquarters about 2 o'clock, and you saw those little snowflakes bawling their eyes out and hugging each other, did you feel a little touch of Schadenfreude? And do you think after 8 years of Obama trashing your country, you deserved it?
Yeah.
Well, hold on to that feeling, people, because we need to do it again and again, right? Now, this is how I see and another little point. A lot of you guys are Tea Party people, and you have been working for 9 or 10 years. You've been phone banking and door knocking and going to meetings and donating money and rallying and doing all sorts of hard, thankless work for what you believe in. And I know what you go through, folks. You ask a little question. I want to ask, tell me this. Was it all worth it on election night, November 2016? Yes. And would you do it all over again to get the same result? Yes. Well, the good news is you have to, folks. Because you have just won the first game of the World Series. But we got to win the second game and the third game and the fourth game. We got to win 2018 and 2020 and 2022. When we've won 4 games in a row, people, then maybe you can think about a holiday. But you don't declare victory after you won the first game, do you? We had a miraculous victory. And I do think it was miraculous. But, there are some who think, well, Mr. Trump's the president now. We've won. It's all over. We can just sit back now. What I think it was, this was not a change in direction. That election night victory was a reprieve. It was one last shot to change this country. One last chance. We'd been let it slide for 100 years. It was almost gone. Hillary Clinton would have finished it. It was almost gone, but there are enough good people still in America to stand up to make a difference, and we got another shot. Now, if you look at the Old Testament, whether you're religious or not, you can see in the Old Testament there were a lot of second chances there. You know, the Israelites, you're not doing the right thing, get back on track. And sometimes they did, and sometimes they didn't. And if they didn't, there were always consequences, right? Well, we're on our second chance here, people. We're on a reprieve. And if we blow this one, do you think we're going to get a third chance? You know, how many third chances were in the Old Testament, people? Not a lot that I can remember. So that's where we are. We've got a miraculous chance to change this country, to save it, to turn it around, and this is not the time for a holiday. This is not the time at all. Now, I want to talk tonight about national security, which is really my big deal. But I want to talk about the aspect of it that is very seldom discussed. Now, I'm sure there's military people here tonight who have taken an oath to defend this country from to defend the Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic, right? Now, America is fantastic at sending its sons and daughters overseas to fight very horrible foreign enemies with great bravery and efficiency. But how much attention is focused on the domestic enemies, people? You know, have we even looked at the domestic enemies for 50 years? And which are more dangerous in the long run? A soldier over there with a gun shooting at you, or a congressman in your House of Representatives trashing your Constitution with his fingers crossed behind his back? Which are more dangerous, folks? Number two. So, has anybody in this room ever had to undergo any form of FBI background check for a government or civilian position? Quite a few of you, okay? Now, is it true those checks can be pretty darn rigorous? They go through your underwear drawers practically, right? Check out your family background, your overseas travel, criminal convictions, financial stability, bounced checks, you know, dodgy relatives. I had a friend who applied for a mid-level federal government job in Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago. The FBI sent 2 agents all the way to Canada to interview that man's communist uncle. And on the strength of that interview, my friend, a staunch conservative, was denied that position. Not because he was a communist, because his uncle was. And it was just too darn close. And you know what? I support that decision. Because you are dealing with the national security of the most important country in the world. And this country has enemies who will use your weak and dishonest to betray you. And I'll give you an example of how high the treason can go, folks. During the Vietnam War, you had a Secretary of State, a man called Dean Rusk. Now, every night he would get the bombing orders for North Vietnam across his desk. That was the targets your planes were going to hit the next day in Vietnam. And every night he would pass those orders on to the Swedish embassy in Washington, D.C., who would give them to the North Vietnamese. So every day your bomber pilots went across North Vietnam. They had their guns trained in exactly the right place to take them down. That's treason, people. And how many of your brave airmen died because of that man's treason? I got that from Admiral Ace Lyons, the former head of the Pacific Fleet. So I give it a lot of credibility, people. So, If you're a young, so you've got to go through background checks, right? For a government job. You have to be a realtor in Florida. You have to drive a school bus. Maybe to work in the post office. But what if you're a young Marxist radical who hangs around with the Communist Party? Like Mark Vasey from Fort Worth. Like Eddie Bernice Johnson, for instance. You write for the Communist newspaper. They work for you, they help to get you elected, they door knock for you and phone bank for you, and then you follow their positions. They get you elected to Congress, where you may serve on the Armed Services Committee, like Mark Vesey does, and you may serve on the Intelligence Committee or the Homeland Security Committee. How much of an FBI background check do you need for those positions, folks? Nothing. Zero. Nothing at all. I'll give you an example. Andre Carson, one of your two Muslim members of your House of Representatives representing Indiana, serves on the Intelligence Committee, overseeing all 16 of your intelligence agencies, NSA, DEA, FBI, CIA, you name it, he oversees it. We've got a film in my movie, and I hope you get that movie if you haven't seen it, where Andre Carson gets up in front of a Muslim Brotherhood front group meeting in Connecticut in 2012. And the Muslim Brotherhood, if you don't know, is the father of Hamas, it's the father of Al-Qaeda, and the grandfather of ISIS. Yet it operates legally in this country through CARE and the Muslim Students Association and other front groups, and works with many of your congressmen and senators. So he gets up in front of the group and says something like this: I understand there are people here tonight watching us. You are undercover. You are spying on us because you think we are here plotting to overthrow this country. Well, I say to you people here undercover tonight, Allah will not allow you to stop us. This guy serves on your intelligence committee, folks. What could possibly go wrong? See, there are no background checks at all in Congress, none whatsoever. They just discovered that 3 Pakistani brothers were running the computer systems for more than 40 Democrats for 10 years and ripping off secrets from the Armed Services Committee, the Intelligence Committee, all of the major committees for 10 years, people. And nobody did anything. They're still not even investigating it properly. So this has been going on for a while. Now, you've got the Congressional Black Caucus, which Eddie Bernice Johnson and Mark Vasey are both members of. It was basically set up by the Cubans about 20 years ago. And the members of the Congressional Black Caucus go down to Cuba all the time. All the time. Barbara Lee has been there 22 times. And they go down to work with the Castro brothers, to work with them on how they can work inside your Congress to get trade and travel restrictions lifted on Cuba. Because the Cubans want to make it easier to send more drugs and more spies and more terrorists to your country. Do you know why the restrictions were imposed in the first place? Because in the early 60s, the FBI found 2 Cuban intelligence officers in New York with a whole room full of dynamite that they were going to use to blow up Macy's on Thanksgiving Eve. So these people are going down there, working with the Castros, coming back and pushing Cuban government policy in your Congress. And under Obama, they got a lot of those travel restrictions lifted, which is going to make it so much easier for the Cubans to do their dirty work, to start more LA riots, get involved in more Occupy movements, get involved in Black Lives Matter, which they are. So what do you call people who go from your country to an enemy foreign country to help them against you? What do you call them? Somebody said the other night, Democrats. Pretty synonymous, really, you know, right now. And what's the penalty for treason, people? What's the legal penalty for treason? Death. So why is it happening every day of the week, people, and nobody's even getting a slap on the wrist? Cowardice. It's cowardice, right? Deep cowardice within your system. So this has been going on for a long time. And I'll ask, any Vietnam veterans here tonight? Wow, quite a few. Well, first thing I'll say is thank you, gentlemen. I'd like to ask a couple of questions. One of them was very stupid, but I think you'll see where I'm going. First question, was the Vietnam War lost in the jungles of Vietnam? Okay, every veteran says the same thing. Is it true that you had some pretty tough rules of engagement and military policy put on you? Like your fighter pilots could not shoot unless they'd been shot at first. You weren't allowed to mine Haiphong Harbour. You weren't allowed to hold territory. Often you had to leave territory and let the enemy re-infiltrate. Is any of that true? Okay, well here's a really dumb question. Did those rules and policies in any way hamper or hinder your ability to fight and win that war? Yes. So had you been allowed to fight that war like you did in World War II, to take the fight right into North Vietnam, to the heart of the enemy, could you have won it and won it pretty darn quickly? Yes. Okay? Every veteran tells me the same thing, inside 6 months probably. So is it also true that when you withdrew, your government, your Congress defunded the South Vietnamese military, basically guaranteeing a communist takeover? So you lost 58,000 young Americans in that war, people. Your comrades in arms, your football team buddies, your cousins, your uncles, your church members, your elementary school friends, your high school buddies. You lost 58,000 young Americans in a war you are not allowed to win. Well, I say this, folks. That war was deliberately sabotaged in your Congress by people like Father Drinan from Massachusetts, who were working hand in glove with the Communist Party USA, which was taking its orders directly from the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, which was allied to the Communist Party of North Vietnam. Do you think there might have been a little bit of treason going on there, folks? And how many of those traitors who condemned tens of thousands of young Americans to completely unnecessary deaths, how many of them paid a single penalty for what they did, folks? One of them was Obama's Secretary of State, a man called John Kerry, sometimes known as Jane Fonda with less testosterone. And one of them was John Conyers. Well, he's just left Congress, right? What, after 140, 150 years of service, I believe. Now, John Conyers, and I'm sorry he's not in jail, because he was one of your most treasonous and dangerous congressmen, deserves to be exposed. Because the reason I say he was one of the most dangerous of your congressmen is because he was the ranking Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, the most powerful committee in your Congress. And when Congress was controlled by the Democrats, as it was in most of his nearly 60-year career, he was the chairman of that committee. Now on the Judiciary Committee, you have Judy Chu from California, who is a long-time supporter of the Communist Workers' Party, a pro-Chinese Maoist outfit. The Chinese press describes her as China's best friend in your Congress. And you should see Judy Chu in Congress when the FBI has the temerity to arrest one of the thousands of Chinese spies operating here. You want to see Judy Chu attack the FBI as racists. You're only picking on this man because he's Chinese. And then you've got Jerry Nadler from New York, a long-time card-carrying member of Democratic Socialists of America, your largest Marxist group. They just set up a chapter here in Collin County, you'll be pleased to know. About 150 odd members, all working through the Democrats. That's where the Democrats get their door knockers from, people. Communists, basically. So Jerry Nadler was a member of this group. Now remember when Acorn got in a lot of trouble about 2009? And they had hearings in the Judiciary Committee whether to investigate Acorn. Now Acorn is a front for Democratic Socialists of America. And guess who shut that investigation down, folks? It was Mr. Jerry Nadler. Because he was not going to attack the people who belonged to the same group that he did, is he? And then you've got Luis Gutierrez from Illinois, Mr. Amnesty. Luis Gutierrez was a leader of the pro-Cuban, Marxist-Leninist Puerto Rican Socialist Party. He was elected several times with the help of the Chicago pro-Chinese communist groups. And he was a very active supporter of several Muslim Brotherhood front groups. And then you have John Conyers himself. 50-year history with the Communist Party USA. 40 years with Democratic Socialists of America. Was at their founding conference. 30 years with the Workers' World Party. They're the people who are ripping down Confederate statues in Louisiana and North Carolina. They support North Korea and Cuba and Iran. And they go on about the Confederacy. And he's got also a very long, deep history with several Muslim Brotherhood front groups. And you want to see John Conyers in our movie when they are trying to get the Muslim Brotherhood designated as a terrorist organisation, which it is in Egypt and Russia and Saudi Arabia. And John Conyers gets up and says, oh no, we shouldn't designate them as terrorists. They gave up violence a long time ago. Now they're a harmless social service organisation. John Conyers is a hardcore anti-American Marxist-Leninist. As hardcore as you can get. He was in the pocket of the Soviet Union through almost all of his career. Yet he headed the Judiciary Committee. And which committee in Congress do you think the FBI answers to, people? The Federal Bureau of Investigation. So you're a young radical like Mark Vasey. You get elected to Congress. There's no security checks. The media is not going to touch you because they'll never go after a leftist. And if the FBI decides to investigate you, they've got to get past Judy Chu and John Conyers and Jerry Nadler and Luis Gutierrez. If the FBI starts investigating congressmen, what do you think is going to happen to their budget next year, folks? The FBI has not investigated sitting congressmen since at least the 1950s. If you are a serving congressman, you're completely free from FBI scrutiny. Do you think that's a sensible policy, people? You know, if you're an army sergeant who sort of is a bit loose with the cipher codes or whatever, the FBI will put you in jail for 30 years. But if you're serving on the Intelligence Committee, overseeing all that and working with the Iranians and the Muslim Brotherhood and the Cubans, doesn't matter. You're fine. Home and hosed. Give you a couple more examples. You got Rosa DeLauro from Connecticut. Now she is the second or third ranking Democrat in the House, Nancy Pelosi's best buddy. Now she is the Democrat who allocates other Democrats to committee positions. That's where she does that. She puts them in their positions. She has an office in the headquarters of the Connecticut Communist Party. a regular visitor to the Connecticut Communist Party functions, and her best friend is Joel Fishman, the head of the Connecticut Communist Party, the head of the Communist Party's Political Action Committee, whose job it is to get left-wing Democrats elected to Congress. So Joel Fishman gets him elected, then her best friend Rosa DeLauro puts him on the appropriate committees. Great little racket, that one, eh? And what about Tammy Baldwin, the senator from Wisconsin, has presidential ambitions. She is a long-time supporter of the Colombian FARC guerrillas. They've been fighting a communist insurrection, a communist uprising in Colombia for 50 years now. And they are known as narco-terrorists because they fund their revolution by selling cocaine and heroin to your young people. Tammy Baldwin has used her position in your Congress on many occasions to try and get US military aid cut off to the Colombian government so they can no longer fight against the insurrection. And they have just gone to peace talks now, and it looks like Colombia's going to go communist, and then they'll be able to send even more drugs to your young people. And that one of your sitting senators has been helping them for 20 years now. You have got at least 100 members of your House and 20 members of your Senate, at least, who are so enmeshed in radical Islam, Muslim Brotherhood fronts, neo-communist fronts, or socialist organisations, sometimes all four. They couldn't pass an FBI background check to sell you stamps at the post office, people. Do you think the Russians would tolerate 100 pro-Americans in their Duma? You think the Castros would tolerate 100 pro-Americans in the Cuban parliament? Yeah, you have a quarter of your House and over a quarter of your Senate basically working for the other side, folks. You think that maybe why you had a nuclear deal with Iran? Maybe why you had Obamacare rammed down your throat? Maybe it's why you have this bans on fracking and you can't drill your own oil. You know, why the Muslim Brotherhood was put into position in Egypt. All of these things start out as communist policy. They become Democrat policy, and the Democrats push them down your throat. When Obama was in power, 30,000 communists were controlling the Democrats, and the Democrats were controlling you. The last 8 years, you are living under a communist government, people. And the only reason they didn't go full on is because they didn't quite have the power that they needed, and you still have a constitution. That's all that saved you, and the Tea Party, of course. Now, I want to talk about if I'm not depressing you enough, I want to talk about what I consider is the single most important national security threat you face today. Now, I'm not downgrading North Korea or Iran or Russia or China. They're all great threats. But I think the thing that could destroy your country more surely than anything else is illegal immigration. Okay? Because it's something you can't undo, very easily anyway. Now, the whole thing started out in California in the 1950s. There's a Communist Party member named Bert Corona. He was a big-time Democrat as well. He was a friend of Bobby Kennedy's. He set up the Viva Kennedy Clubs, the first organised effort to bring Latinos into the Democratic Party. He also set up, with a whole bunch of Saul Alinsky money out of Chicago. Does anyone know who Saul Alinsky was? The father of community organising, a Marxist radical out of Chicago. He worked with the mob so he could combine mafia and Marxist tactics to shake down businesses. He was the father of Acorn, the mentor to Hillary Clinton and the inspiration to Barack Obama. That Chicago way, the mob and Marxism what a great combination. So anyway, he gave a lot of money to Corona, and Corona used that money to set up a whole network through the Southwest and Southern California, right from Texas across to Southern California, of support groups for illegal immigrants. And the purpose of these groups was to encourage illegals across the border, get them work in factories and farms, get their kids in school, and get them settled. Now, Corona died in 2002. But he left hundreds of volunteers and workers behind him that he had trained to carry on his work. And 3 of them work very closely together in California. They have transformed that state. The first of them is a man called Antonio Villagrosa, a hardcore Marxist. He was the mayor of Los Angeles. He used to go down to Cuba to cut sugarcane for the Castro brothers. And he may become the next governor of California. He's running just behind the favourite right now. He is the man who basically turned Los Angeles into a full-on sanctuary city. He forbade the LAPD from enforcing immigration laws, and the illegals flooded in the hundreds of thousands. Second member of this little clique, a Communist Party supporter named Gil Cedillo, until recently the Democratic head of the California State Senate. You've heard that California recently gave driver's licenses to illegals? That was Gil Cedillo's work, people. The third member of this little clique, the most powerful woman in California in my opinion. She serves on the Democratic National Committee, best good friends with Obama. Her name is Maria Elena Durazo, a Marxist and the former head of the California AFL-CIO. She was behind the massive union-driven and union-paid-for Latino voter registration drives and Get Out the Vote efforts that added hundreds of thousands of new Latino voters to the California rolls in the last 20 years. And guess which party they voted for by about a 4-to-1 margin, folks? The Democrats. Because of the deliberate Marxist program of using illegal immigration, California has gone from a reddish, purplish state to solidly blue. You cannot elect a Republican in California now statewide for love nor money. And that is very, very important when it comes to presidential elections, folks, because California, being the most populous state in the country, has the most electoral college votes, which gives the Democrats a huge advantage when it comes to the election time. And guess which state has the second biggest number of electoral college votes, folks? Yours, which is why they are coming for you big time, folks. They are targeting the state like you would not believe. And I'll go into that a little bit later. So, the leader of the amnesty movement today is a man called Eliseo Medina. He was the executive vice president of SEIU, the union. He's a member of Democratic Socialists of America. He's a Marxist. And he was Obama's personal advisor on all issues to do with amnesty and immigration. I want to ask a little question. Any former or current Labour Union members here tonight? Not trying to persecute anyone, just okay. Well, think back, some of you may think back in history a bit. Which organisation in America 30 years ago was the most militantly, strongly opposed to illegal immigration? Which organisation had people on the border turning people into the INS? Which organisation was constantly lobbying Congress to increase penalties on any employer caught employing illegal labour? It's the unions, people. It's the AFL-CIO and Cesar Chavez and the farm workers. Cesar Chavez employed a woman whose job it was to go into the fields and find illegals and turn them into the INS. And that woman is now married to Eliseo Medina, the leader of the amnesty movement. So the unions were opposed to it because they understood that illegals would take their jobs, they would lower their wages and conditions, and they would break their strikes. It was very logical, if you're a union member, to oppose illegal immigration. It's direct competition to you, and unfair competition at that. So today in America, 2018, which organisations are leading the charge for pushing most hard for amnesty? It's the unions. The SEIU, Teamsters, all of them, they're pushing sanctuary cities, they're providing help to illegals, and they're using their muscle to try and get amnesty pushed through your House and Senate. They are leading the charge, no question. So why the 100% reversal, people? It's very simple. Before 1994, American labour unions were led by people like Lane Kirkland and George Meany, and they were hardcore anti-communist patriotic Americans. They would have been right behind President Trump, I guarantee it. But in 1994, there was a coup. That was the year that Democratic Socialists of America got enough power inside the unions to stage a coup. They got rid of Lane Kirkland, and they put their member, John Sweeney, in as president. And now their supporter, Richard Trumka, runs it for them. So what they did, they removed they changed the AFL-CIO's constitution so that communists could hold office in the AFL-CIO. They were banned before that time. The old 60s and 70s radicals came flooding in. They became union presidents and union organisers, and now every single major labour union in your country is Marxist run, Marxist led. Completely in the tank for the Marxists. So before that time, the agenda of your unions was to protect the interests of American workers. After 1994, it changed to promoting Marxist revolution. Illegals are disastrous for union workers, folks. They still are today. But that doesn't matter because union workers don't count. It's all about the revolution, people. The unions are selling their own members down the river every day, their wages and conditions, because the revolution comes first. Now, I want to show how that works in practice. Now, so the unions were anti, now they're pro. And it was Eliseo Medina who got them to flip their policy 100% at their national convention in Los Angeles in 2000. The Marxists did it, folks. But the big question is why? Why is this Medina's life's work? Why are the unions and the communists completely committed to this? Why did Hillary Clinton promise to grant amnesty and citizenship to every illegal immigrant within 100 days of taking office? And why did Obama go way out on a limb just before the 2014 election, trying to get amnesty through the Senate, through the House, knowing that the blowback would probably cost him the Senate? Well, Eliseo Medina let the cat out of the bag at a big progressive conference in Washington, D.C. in 2009. I've got him on tape saying this. It's in my movie. You can check it out for real. He gets up in front of the comrades and says this: passing amnesty for our 11 million undocumented workers is the number one priority of the progressive movement. We have to, and he said, and did he talk about compassion or reuniting families or giving immigrants a break or dreamers? Nothing, people. All he said was this: in 2008, Latinos voted overwhelmingly for Obama and progressive candidates. If we stand by these people and get them citizenship and voting rights, they will stand with our movement. That will give us at least 8 million more Democratic Party votes. That will give us a governing majority, not just for the next few election cycles, basically forever. Think about it, folks. Do the math. Mitt Romney lost by 2.5 million votes. Donald Trump won by 200,000 votes. There are between 12 and 40 million illegals in this country. We know they will vote at least 80% Democrat if they are given the vote. That is between 10 and 24 million new Democratic voters. Where's that going to leave you, people? How long do you think you'll keep Texas red if that happens? And how long do you think it's before Georgia flips, North Carolina flips, and Florida flips? Trump won Florida by 200,000, by 120,000 votes. They've just got 150,000 Puerto Ricans moved into that state, folks. How do you think they're going to vote? All you have to do is lose Georgia, North Carolina, or Arizona, you're pretty much done. If you lose Texas, you are completely done. Think about it, people. This is the game. This is the game. Obama went full on for amnesty in 2014. He knew it would cost in the Senate, but he didn't care. Because Obama is a Marxist-Leninist. And Lenin taught you take one step backwards to get 2 steps forward. So what? We give up the Senate. We make the Republicans happy for a couple of years. Great. We get amnesty. We win every single election after that point forever. We have complete power. We have a one-party state America. That's what amnesty is all about, folks. Answer me this question. If 80% of the illegals voted Republican, how long do you think it would have been before Obama had the biggest fence on the border you have ever seen? He would have had drones patrolling it, the National Guard patrolling it, you name it, folks. It's all about the votes and achieving one-party state power, and you've got all these simple-minded Republicans who are getting these big fat checks from the Chamber of Commerce, which wants an unending supply of cheap labour, who think they can grant amnesty and somehow stay in power. You tell me how they do it, folks. Where's the math? You know, just on current patterns, Texas will flip in 5 or 6 election cycles, just as it is, if we don't do something about it. You add 2 or 3 more million Democratic votes to the state, and how long do you think you'll hold on to it, folks? So that is the plan. That is the plan to take America down. And when Hillary Clinton, on election night, the Democrats could feel it, people. They knew that they had it in the bag. Now, have you ever seen as much vitriol and contempt directed at a president in your lifetimes as this one? Even close? Not even under Reagan was it like this. Just unrelenting attack every day for any reason, no matter what. So why is that, people? Well, I think there's 2 reasons for it. The first is very human, it's very easy to understand. Those Democrats were so excited on election night. They were going to get their president. We all knew Hillary was going to win. It was absolutely guaranteed. The polls all told us they could just about taste it. And on election night, when those results started coming in, they were like a bunch of kids who thought they were going to get the biggest bike you've ever seen for Christmas. And they got a pair of socks. And they were bitter, people. They were disappointed. And that's part of it. But the real reason is this. Because, see, if you're a Democrat, you own certain segments of the population, right? You own those white union voters in Pennsylvania and Ohio. You own the soccer moms. You own the black community. You own most of the Latino community. You own the gay community. You own these groups. And that's how Democrats think. We think as individuals. They think group think. That's Marxism, people. That is Marxist thinking. So, when Donald Trump went up to Pennsylvania and said to those white union guys up there, hey, I don't see a lot of factories here. I see NAFTA has devastated you. I see a lot of rusty factories, a lot of poverty. Is this what voting Democrat has done for you? Well, we're going to bring the factories back, people. We're going to rebuild American industry. Why don't you vote for me? And a lot of them said, hell yeah. And they changed a whole lifetime of voting patterns and they voted for Donald Trump. And when he went into the black communities and said, I don't see a lot of jobs here, guys. I see a lot of drugs and crime. Why don't you vote for me? What do you got to lose? And a whole bunch of them said, yeah, what have we got to lose? And a lot of them flipped as well. And this is freaking the Democrats out, people, because they understand if Donald Trump is a successful president, if the taxes keep on coming down, if he closes the borders to stop the flow of heroin and cocaine into the cities, if he stops the flow of illegal labour so young black kids can actually get jobs and careers again, if he opens up the factories, gets the factories going, if he can open up the energy field so you can drill your own oil where you want to again and not rely on Saudi Arabia and Venezuela, if he can stop the flow of refugees into this country, if he can do all of those things, you will have an economic boom in this country like you have never seen before. You will have prosperity, you will have a future, you will have a future for your children like you have never seen. And Americans will come first, and Americans will actually have jobs and careers and be able to have families. Those Bernie kids will be able to get out of their mom's basement and get $80,000 a year jobs and mortgages and families, and they'll forget that socialism crap pretty quickly, folks. That is what is freaking the Democrats out more than anything. If America is successful, if Donald Trump and you can make America great again, the Democrats are gone for 40 years, folks. They're done. You saw when Trump did his State of the Union speech, when he said, this is the proof, people, when he said black unemployment is the lowest it's ever been, did you see any cheers from the Congressional Black Caucus? You saw scowls, people, because their base will turn against them. The Democrats are freaking, people, because their survival is at stake. Everything they've worked for is at stake. They were this close to a one-party state, now it's all crumbling before their eyes. Don't you think they're going to get desperate? And what is more dangerous than a cornered rat, people? Because that's where they are now. So their strategy is very simple. Destroy Trump at every opportunity, impeach Trump, denigrate Trump, divide his base, criticize his base, mock his base, stop him getting anything done. He got the tax thing through and people are already feeling the effects of that, and that is annoying the hell out of the Democrats. So how do you criticize people getting more money in their pocket, folks? It's a big problem for them. But they're going to try and stop every other thing. If they really cared about the dreamers, do you not think they would have let President Trump build the wall? But they don't care about the dreamers, people. All they want is that wall never to be built so they can keep importing more and more Latin American Democrats. That's all they care about. So this is where we're at. I heard a Tea Party lady say the other day, she said, oh well, we've got President Trump now, we can have a holiday. They don't need the Tea Parties anymore. President Trump is being attacked by Hollywood, by the media, by the North Koreans, by the Russians, by the Chinese, by the whole of the Democratic Party, by Black Lives Matter, all these liberal radical groups out there, and a big chunk of his own party. Did George Washington win the revolution all by himself, folks? He needs an army. The president needs an army. And I tell you what else he needs. He needs a reliable majority in the US Senate. And he needs to hold the House. Because if we lose the House, he gets impeached. And there's no more legislation. If he loses the Senate, he won't get impeached, but there's no more legislation. Everything grinds to a halt. And he's a lame duck president. So right now in the Senate, he's got a very unreliable majority. It includes John McCain, it may soon include Mitt Romney, it includes people like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. They are basically Democrats, folks. Now there are 8 Republican seats up for re-election in 2018. 8 of them. Now we need to hold primaries basically in 7 of them, every single one but the one in Texas. Because Ted Cruz is okay, people. If we had another 8 Ted Cruzes, we'd be doing real well. So your mission in Texas is very simple. And we also got to hold the House, and it's very tricky because the Democrats are turning out and the Conservatives are staying home. And there's a whole bunch of seats in Texas that are open. The incumbent is no longer there, and the name recognition, it wasn't what it was. So the Democrats only have to win about 24 seats to take the House, and most midterm elections, the ruling party tends to lose 25 to 30. So it's a very close run thing. So your mission in Texas is very simple. You've got to re-elect Ted Cruz, not by 8 points, 10 points, by 20 points, so that the Democrats just throw up their hands and give up on Texas for 10 years. Right? That's what you got to do. And you got to get behind the most conservative possible person in all of these congressional races, so not just a Republican wins it, but a conservative, constitutional Republican wins it. Because isn't President Trump going to have a lot easier time if he's got another 5 or 6 Ted Cruzes to back him up and another 10 or 12 Louis Gomez to back him up? Isn't that going to make things so much easier for the president? And can you think, if you're looking at your political lives in the next couple of years, what is more intelligent and a more intelligent use of your time to make sure we increase the conservative majority in the House and the Senate? Now you can't tell me elections don't make a difference, folks. We have got a good Supreme Court justice because of the last election. You got a nice tax cut because of the last election. You got Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, moved to Jerusalem because of the last election. We haven't got everything we want, folks, but you can't tell me we haven't got a lot of good stuff. Well, do you want that good stuff to keep coming? Well, you got to keep batting hard in the World Series, folks, because we won the first game and we got the second game coming up, and we got to win that too. And then we got to win 2020 and win 2024. And if we do that, the Democrats will be decimated by then. The economy will be booming. You'll have a whole cultural shift in this country, and we can keep that cycle going for decades, people. We can make the Ronald Reagan boom look insipid if we win the next 3 or 4 elections. Because this is the Democrats' plan. I want to tell you what they're planning to do and how we got to counter this. The first step is obviously destroy Trump. They got to destroy Trump, so they're going to do everything they can. The second step is this. You know there are people coming into Texas all the time to flip the state. Well, this is how they're going to do it, and this is why they're doing it. Who remembers the old Jesse Jackson Rainbow Coalition of the 1980s? Good old scamster Jesse, right? Well, his brilliant idea was this. You unite the minorities into a bloc. The progressive whites, progressive blacks, progressive Latinos, progressive Native Americans, progressive Muslims, progressive gays, progressive Asian Americans, white, black, brown, yellow, green, red, lavender. That was the Rainbow Coalition. That is how they think of these things. Well, there's a man in San Francisco I consider the most dangerous man in the country right now. His name is Steve Phillips. Back in the 1980s, he was a member of the League of Revolutionary Struggle, a communist group, pro-Chinese communist group that had a big presence in Stanford University. Now, the whole of the League of Revolutionary Struggle joined Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition. They basically ran it for him. It was a communist operation. Now, and Steve Phillips worked for the coalition for a whole year. He was right into it. Now, in 1990, the Jackson Coalition didn't win in '88. It sort of faded away after that. But Steve Phillips and the League of Revolutionary Struggle, they dissolved the League and they all joined the Democratic Party. And Steve Phillips married very well. He married into the Sandler family from San Francisco, multi-billionaire, big-time Democrat donors. And Steve Phillips has used that money to get himself some very strong positions inside the Democratic Party. He also used that money to set up a group called Power PAC. And Power PAC funnels money into the races of candidates of colour, black, Latino and Asian, and a few whites around the country. They back Mark Vasey here in Fort Worth. They backed several state senate candidates here, Latino women mainly in Texas. They backed Mazie Hirono and Tulsi Gabbard out in Hawaii. They're backing the governor's races in Georgia right now, Stacey Abrams, Ben Jealous for the governorship of Maryland, and Andrew Gillum for the governorship of Florida. They are working to resurrect the Rainbow Coalition. And what they are doing is pouring huge amounts of money and huge amounts of resources into Texas, to Florida, to North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. They are all states with large black and Latino populations who don't vote. They say Texas is not a red state, it's a non-voting state, because large numbers of Latino and black populations stay at home. And they are pouring resources into your states to mobilise that base. Now, you saw it operate in Virginia. They did it in Virginia. Virginia was a red state. Now it's almost blue because these same communist groups signed up over 300,000 new voters in Northern Virginia, and they worked with the governor to legalise felons voting. That's how they flipped Virginia. You saw them win the Senate race in Alabama. Roy Moore would have won by a country mile, but he got damaged by the scandal. So Steve Phillips and his friends poured a whole bunch of money into Alabama. They mobilised every Muslim, Latino, black voter they could, and they beat them by 20,000 votes. And the head of CARE in Alabama, the Muslim terrorist organisation, boasted that we beat Roy Moore by 20,000 votes and we got 20,000 Muslim voters out there and they all voted for Doug Jones. That's how they flipped Alabama. And they are pouring their resources into the southern states, and all they have to do is flip Florida and North Carolina and Georgia and they will win the next election. They won't get Texas next time, but they'll keep going until they do if we don't stop them. Georgia and North Carolina are on the edge, Florida's on the edge, Arizona is on the edge. And that's where they're putting all of their resources right now. Now, the other little aspect to this is that at Stanford University, there was a young football player, black guy, who was friends with the radicals. He was friends with Steve Phillips and his radical set. He is now the senator from New Jersey. His name is Cory Booker. There was another young radical called Maya Harris, who also hung around with the radical set at Stanford. Her sister you would have heard of, Kamala Harris. They are engineering Cory Booker and Kamala Harris right now to run at the top of the Democrat ticket. At least one of them will be there, preferably both of them. Asian American, Black American Kamala Harris, Black American for Cory Booker. Then they're going to rerun the Rainbow Coalition strategy all over again. Steve Phillips has written a book called Brown is the New White. It was endorsed by Barack Obama. Steve Phillips was the first man to fund Barack Obama, by the way. Endorsed by Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama. And the thesis of this book is very simple. 26% of the electorate are white progressives. They will vote Democrat if you put Adolf Hitler on the ticket. They wouldn't care. Locked in, hardcore progressives. 25% of the electorate are progressives of colour. Black, Latino, Asian American, Native American, Muslim American. 26 plus 25 is 51%, the new American majority. So their plan is they're going to do the Rainbow Coalition, they're going to sign up thousands of Black and Latino Muslim voters in the southern states, and then they're going to try and run Cory Booker and Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket to get the woman, the Black, the Latino, the Asian vote, the white progressive vote, 51%, 52%, 53%, then they will legalise every remaining illegal in the country. They will open up the doors to refugee resettlement from the Middle East, and they will make you a permanent minority in your own country. That is the plan, people. Does this sound feasible to you? Is this wacko and far-fetched? What do you think? You can see exactly what they're doing, folks. You've been watching it unfold. You just may not have quite seen the mechanics behind it and the people behind it. So that is the plan. And that is why they hate Donald Trump, because it should have happened last time, and now they're going to do it all over again. And the thing is, if Trump is successful, their whole strategy fades away to nothing. If they lose 25% of the black vote, and 10% of the Latino vote, and 20% of the white union vote, it all turns to custard. It's gone. It's all gone. It's all for nothing. That is why the Democrats are so absolutely fired up, because they understand they have their fate is either going to be complete destruction or total power. One or the other. So they got a very powerful carrot, and they got a very big stick hanging over their head. So this is where we are, folks. We can do like that Tea Party lady said, and we can all have a holiday. And you deserve it. Absolutely you deserve a holiday. But for the sake of your children and your grandchildren, people, is this the time to have a holiday? Because if we can get behind the president now, if we can win big in 2018, we can increase our majority in the Senate by 2 or 3, increase our majority in the House by a couple. That will throw the Democrats into complete disarray and complete despair. And we will absolutely guarantee a victory in 2020. If we do well in this election cycle, we will win 2020. And the Democrats will be on the bones of their backside from that point onwards. But if we blow this in 2018, they'll be fired up, they'll impeach the president, and almost certainly win in 2020. Can you see the two scenarios, folks? Very plain, isn't it? So this is where we are. We can sit back and have a holiday, and we can hope that everything goes well in 2018. We can hope and we can pray and we can just have a holiday. And that might go okay, but the chances are it won't. You know, we have been given a God-given chance to work harder, not to have a holiday. And if we don't work harder, I don't think we're going to get another chance handed to us, folks. So this is what we do. We pick our races, we get involved, We make sure Ted Cruz comes back with a massive majority. We make sure your local Conservative here wins his primary and his race. And if you've got any energy left over, put it into another district around here. If you think your guy's going to coast in, go put your money and your time and your phone banking into somewhere else where it's going to make a difference. Can you think of anything that you can do to more guarantee your children's future than getting involved in the next couple of election races and doing your best? Is anything that you can do for your kids going to be more valuable than that? So, this is our choice. We can sit back and do nothing, and your children will eventually live in slavery. That's almost a given. Or we can get stuck in, give it everything that's within us for your God, your country, your constitution, and your family. Give it everything you have got. And I can promise you two things if you do that. You can give it everything you've got, and there's still the possibility we may lose this. But at least you will earn the right to look your children in the eye and say, I did everything I possibly could. And what is that worth to you, folks? But if you win, and you can win, I think you can definitely win this and win it big. You will spark a liberty, you will spark an economic boom in this country. But even better than that, you will spark a liberty boom. You will encourage the freedom forces all over the country. You'll encourage the constitutionalists. You'll encourage those young Turning Point USA guys to get involved. You'll bring a whole bunch of young people into liberty, and you will spark liberty revolutions, not just here, but all around the globe. You've already seen Brexit, people. You think those Iranians who protested against the mullahs recently, do you think they would have done that if Hillary Clinton had been president? They are itching for liberty, folks, and everybody's watching America because they know if America goes down, everybody's hope goes with it. But if America continues on the right path, if America can recover its constitution and its economy and its unchallenged military power, that's going to encourage liberty revolutions all over, folks. Do you think those other people in those foreign lands deserve liberty too? You don't have to go and fight for them. You just have to fight for your country and set the example. Isn't that a cool way of doing things? No blood spilled, people. You just do what's right for your country and they'll do what's right for theirs. So I want to say to you folks, please find everything that's within your heart for your God and your country and your constitution and your family. Give it everything you've got. Because if you fight and you win, you will spark economic booms. You will spark a liberty boom. You will give your children not just the incredible country that you inherited, but one even greater. Is that worth fighting for, folks?
Yeah.
So I want to say to you people, thank you so much for what you do for America, for my country, and for liberty. God bless America, God bless Texas, and God bless the Tea Party. Thank you very much.
I am American, that's what I am, that's what I think and what I do. American, that's what I am, and I bleed red, white, and blue. And I bleed red, white, and blue. It's not about party, it's about what's right. Our American, taking back our country, come and join the fight. Our American.